I'm Esther. I've got stage 4 melanoma, and in 2024 I travelled to Israel to access TILs.
And I'm Esther's mum, Jane, and we're here to talk to you about why we had to go to Israel and how we did it.
Yeah. So I've had melanoma for 30 years, which I've done a bit of a slide of how that's happened. I've been stage 4 since 2009 after it metastasised to my lung. At the time, we asked our oncologist if she knew of anyone who'd had the same who was still alive 20 years later, and she didn't.
No, but she did tell us about Stephen Rosenberg, who'd pioneered TILs in the States, and it had proved to be curative for some people. And this was the one single thing that gave us hope for a future, because in 2009 there were no effective treatments at all for melanoma, so we started searching.
We found Paul Lorigan at Manchester and Mark Roberts, who had set up a fund for the Christie to raise £1 million to fund TILs in the UK. We contacted him and we got involved. My husband Chris, he climbed Kilimanjaro, and we packed bags at a posh supermarket in Cheshire just to raise the money. These are just pictures of my husband climbing Kilimanjaro.
We raised £1 million for TILs.
1 million.
And then ipilimumab was approved by NICE, and so this superseded the TILs.
So between 2010 and 2021, all my recurrences were isolated tumours, and they were able to be surgically removed. And then in 2021, I got tumours in my bicep and axilla. And we applied to get on the thesis TILs trial. Unfortunately, I wasn't accepted because I hadn't had any systemic treatments. We asked if they would, if an untreated tumour sample could be frozen for TILs in case I failed systemic treatment, but there was no facilities to do this.
And so between 2021 and 2024, Esther had both targeted and immunotherapy, but by 2024, Nivo wasn't working and her tumours were still growing. And so we weren't eligible for the Tilvans trial because she'd been pre-treated and had systemic therapy. So we explored the prospect of going to Israel for TILs with the support of our oncologist.
Yeah, we looked into it, and there was basically America and Israel. In America, you're looking at like £1 million, so that was off the table. So the first steps were for us to make.
And this is what the SABR website looks like, and you request a consultation from this website, and we were put in touch with the case manager, and he told us what scans we'd need and what medical reports we'd have to send over for Esther to be assessed for eligibility for TILs. So you do this, you get your scans and your reports by the Subject Access Request Department of your local hospital trust, and it's your legal right under the 2018 Data Protection Act, and they must respond within 30 days. But the problem is you need them sooner than that. So you have to stress the importance of the urgency of it and chase them and get your CNS to support you and chase them. So we rang them every day.
About 10 times a day.
And after 25 days of to and froing, Sheba requested $650 for a video consultation with Ronnie Shapiro, who was the head of the Oncology Institute at Sheba.
So on the 9th of June, we had a video consultation. Dr. Shapiro had my scans on her screen. She put all the negatives to us, and suggested Encobini as an alternative option. She told us that back in 2006, before systemic treatments were available, they had a success rate of 40%, but now in previously treated patients, it was only 20%. Sorry. After that video consultation, 4 days later, we heard back and they had denied treatment as they said that my tumours weren't accessible. Gutted and panicking, it didn't stop us. We sought the opinion of 2 oncologists and a surgeon in the UK who all confirmed that they were accessible. So we pushed and begged Sheba to allow me to go over just for a physical appointment. So 2.5 weeks later, they agreed to see me in person. So on the 6th of July, without knowing if they would accept me, me and Mum flew out to Tel Aviv.
There we go. So this is, you need to keep up to date with what's happening in Israel. This is the Foreign Office map. Last week it was green and amber. This week it's all red, so no one's flying in and out at the moment. So just keep your eye on that website, on the Foreign Office website. So with flights, there's numerous flights that fly there, both direct and indirect. And we flew with several of them. But you feel pretty safe on the El Al aeroplanes because they've got missile defense systems on their plane. There's a few different options of where to stay. Sheba Hospital have 2 on-site accommodations of their own, but they weren't available to us because they were housing the families of the wounded soldiers. So you could use an Airbnb or rent something, or we decided to stay in a hotel, and that was the Far Maccabea Hotel, which was off-site but fairly close by, and we felt safe there. It was family orientated, and it had 24-hour reception, key card security, and the safe rooms were fully signposted.
So the day after we arrived at Tel Aviv, we met with Ronnie Shapira, and she acknowledged, quite surprised, with how well I looked, assessed my tumours, and then referred me to the surgeon, Daniel Rosin, as it was up to him to decide whether they could be resected. The next day we saw the surgeon. Within a couple of minutes, he gave us the green light for surgery. Due to theatre capacity, the surgery couldn't be done until a week later. So we spent that week just trying to be normal in a war zone. We walked to the local park for ice cream, had lunch at the local cafe, watched films. And my top tip for anyone thinking of doing it is to get a VPN so that you can still access all your UK streaming platforms. This is just a little video of my time in Israel for the harvesting. So the day finally came to get my cells harvested. The surgery took about 35 minutes, but yeah, it's very different to the UK. They seem to be using like rags instead of pre-packed sterile surgical drapes. There was no nice nurse next to you, comforting you, holding your hand. They were all speaking Hebrew, and it just felt very frightening. The next day, we were allowed to fly home and to wait in hope that my tills would grow in the lab. We were told this could take between 4 and 6 weeks.
Yeah, so back in the UK, Esther had 10 days of radiotherapy to a 10-centimetre tumour in her bicep because she was losing, all feeling in her hand. And we were keen to have this to encourage the abscopal effect, which there's a definition up there. But in layman's terms, it means that you treat a local tumour and it can cause regression in distant tumours, particularly when combined with immunotherapy or TILs. And then 8 days after returning to the UK, our medical coordinator rang us and said to start making plans to get back here. So we decided to get as many of the scans done in the UK, so that we weren't in Israel as long, and also it reduced the cost. So they like to be there about a week before your treatment starts, so that they can do the pre-admission tests.
So we were quite shocked that they'd rang that early, as we wasn't expecting the phone call that quickly, but they said that my cells were growing well in the lab. And so 2.5 weeks after having my cells harvested, we had booked a flight back to Israel on the 2nd of August from Luton, which ended up being a nightmare. Flights to Israel were getting cancelled left, right and centre due to the conflict there. We woke up at the airport hotel to a message from Wizz Air to say that the flight was cancelled. We frantically Googled for any other flights to Tel Aviv and found a British Airways flight leaving Heathrow, but the check-in for the flight closed in 50 minutes. So we did a challenge Annika across London, hitting many obstacles in the airport, and somehow managed to get on that flight by the skin of his teeth. So our advice is to have a plan B, as Israel is in conflict and everything can change. The first 4 days were taken up with the remaining tests and pre-TILS procedures. This is just a list of the various pre-TILS tests needed. We were admitted to hospital on the 8th of August after seeing the lab director and our consultant. Our appointment with Dr. Shapira was tense. She asked if I'd had any treatment since our last appointment, and we told her I'd had radiotherapy. She said that the protocol was no TILS therapy within 2 weeks of radiotherapy, and mine had only been 1 week. We panicked thinking it wasn't going to happen. Thankfully, they came up with a plan to delay treatment slightly by starting 1 day later than planned and giving me 1 day less chemo.
So 3 days after admission, Esther started a chemo for 4 days. And on the 15th of August, she was to receive her TILS. And our consultant came up to see us, and she was bearing good news and bad news. And the bad news was that Esther's TILS had got the bacteria mycoplasma in it. And this could have been contamination from the lab, or it could have been within Esther's TILS. So our consultant had to go to the ethics board to get permission to continue. And we did continue, and should Esther have run into any problems, then she would have had antibiotics. And the good news was that Esther had had a great response. The TILS had grown to 108 billion. And that was the second highest result in 20 years for Sheba Hospital. And for context, the approved dosage is 7.5 billion, anything over that. So, and they were of good quality. They were 98% viable and 90% with the magic CD8 plus cells. And the TILS infusion was 40 minutes long, and the first IL-2 was given 90 minutes later. And Israel are the same, they give up to 6 IL-2s, and Esther had 5.
And I think everyone looking into it worries about the IL-2 because we all hear about how horrendous it is. And whilst it is hard hitting, it wasn't as bad as I imagined it was to be.
No, but it's pretty tough watching it. So she was grey, she was sick, she'd got a high temperature, low blood pressure, and then came the rigours. But you get fantastic medical attention out there. They've been doing it 20 years, and they preempt all the side effects, and they come and deal with them straight away. But it's important to say that although you're paying for this treatment, you're entering the State of Israel Health Service. So you don't get any hotel-style hospital rooms or any restaurant-quality meals, far from that. And your carer that you take with you has to deal with the day-to-day problems, so charting your urine output and taking you to the toilet and doing all the day-to-day care is the responsibility of your carer, and also alerting the staff if you've got any problems. So make sure you take the right person with you that can speak out for you.
So we stayed on the transplant unit for 2 more days, and then they moved us to the oncology ward to recover while my neutrophils increased. I had a fever and a blotchy rash, which was managed with antibiotics. My hemoglobin was low, so there was a possibility of me needing a blood transfusion. But 4 days later, my neutrophils had increased enough to be discharged, and we got to fly home. I had the second nivolumab in the UK privately 4 weeks after the first one. This Nivo is included in the TILS package you get with Israel. So, if you can't access it in the UK privately, then you will have to stop there a bit longer. Now the cost. The TILS package is approximately £120,000 with some slight variations. If you need a blood transfusion or a stem cell collection or intensive care, these are all extra. Within the package, you are given 16 days in hospital, but anything over that is going to cost you. It's $1,500 per day, and if you need ICU, then that's $4,200 per day.
Oh, and these are our lived experiences of what we've learned. So Israel are on their own time. Their weekend is Friday and Saturday. Everything closes down on a Friday lunchtime till Sunday morning. And they take the holidays from May to August, so everything slows down then. And you've just got to be aware of that when you're sort of getting frustrated trying to contact them.
And don't take no for an answer, which seems to be my motto throughout this whole thing. Be prepared to beg them to see you in person, as they might decline your treatment. Keep your oncologists informed at every step so that they can support you. And discuss any planned treatments with Israel. If you've got radiotherapy planned, tell them, because they give you no information to tell you what treatments you can and can't have in between visits.
Have a plan A, B, and C. So things can go wrong, particularly because Israel's in constant conflict. So plan your journey and have a second option in mind.
And believe it or not everybody speaks English. And it can make you feel anxious when they're talking about you and you don't understand. The phonics in their speech is harsh and they sound like they're arguing with each other just in normal conversations. So a top tip is to make sure you've got Google Translate, because we needed that quite a bit.
And if we'd had the information that Israel had a 40% success rate in treatment-naive patients, then we would have accessed TIL's first line. And this scan is 6 months after TIL's. Next one. Oh, we've got music on.
Oh, I have, yeah. So here's just a few photos of our time over in Israel, accompanied by the beautiful sound of a choir that paid us a surprise visit on the transplant unit.
That's it.
Yep.
Thank you.